Saruman, one of the most compelling characters in J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth saga, begins his journey as a white wizard, a member of the Astari, a group of 5 wizards sent by the Valar to aid the Free Peoples against the encroaching darkness of Sauron. His role as a white wizard is one of great significance, embodying wisdom, power, and a profound sense of duty. Saruman, whose name means man of skill in the Elvish language, is initially portrayed as the epitome of wisdom and strength. He is the chief of the Order, superior even to Gandalf, and his knowledge of the lore and history of Middle-earth is vast and deep. His presence commands respect and admiration, as he is seen as a beacon of hope and a staunch ally against the forces of evil. In the early days of Middle-earth, Saruman was instrumental in many key decisions and actions taken against the dark forces. His deep understanding of the ancient arts and sciences, as well as his strategic mind, made him a pivotal figure in the White Council, a group of powerful beings including Elrond, Galadriel, and Gandalf, dedicated to countering Sauron's influence. Saruman's authority and wisdom earned him the leadership of the Council, further solidifying his status as a primary defender of Middle-earth. He was seen as incorruptible, a guardian of knowledge, and a defender of the realm against the shadow of Sauron. Saruman's origins are steeped in the rich history of Middle-earth. Originally named Kurumo in the west, Saruman was a Maia, a spirit of great power, who served the Valar, the godlike beings who shaped the world. Chosen specifically for his intelligence and capability, he was sent to Middle-earth along with the other Istari to help guide and protect the Free Peoples from the growing threat of Sauron. Upon arriving, Saruman quickly established himself as a force for good, earning the trust and admiration of those he sought to protect. His early accomplishments and unwavering dedication to his mission were widely recognized, and his rise to power seemed not only justified, but essential for the preservation of Middle-earth. However, even as Saruman's influence grew, so did the seeds of his eventual downfall. His inherent pride and desire for knowledge began to overshadow his noble intentions. Saruman's profound intellect and insatiable curiosity led him to explore the darkest corners of ancient lore, including the arts of Sauron himself. He believed that to truly understand and defeat Sauron, he needed to comprehend his methods and power. This pursuit of knowledge, though initially well-intentioned, gradually led Saruman down a perilous path. His fascination with the rings of power, particularly the One Ring, grew, and with it, his ambition to wield such power himself. As Saruman delved deeper into these forbidden studies, his interactions with the Palantir, the ancient seeing stones, became more frequent and intense. The Palantir, which allowed users to communicate and see across great distances, became a tool of both empowerment and enslavement for Saruman. Through the Palantir, Saruman sought greater knowledge and power, but instead found himself ensnared by Sauron's malevolent will. The Dark Lord, ever cunning and manipulative, used the Palantir to exploit Saruman's weaknesses, feeding his ambitions and fostering his sense of superiority. Under Sauron's influence, Saruman began to believe that he alone could master the power needed to rule Middle-earth, a belief that led him to justify increasingly immoral actions. Saruman's ambitions grew unchecked, fueled by his growing arrogance and the belief that he was destined for greater things. He began to see himself not just as a guardian of Middle-earth, but as its rightful ruler. Saruman's study of the One Ring and his delusions of grandeur convinced him that he could rival Sauron and, eventually, overthrow him. His mind, once sharp and strategic, became clouded with dreams of dominion and control. In pursuit of this power, Saruman embarked on numerous secretive projects, experimenting with dark magics and attempting to create powerful beings that would serve him in his quest for supremacy. His stronghold, Isengard, was transformed from a place of learning and wisdom into a fortress of war, fortified with iron and filled with the machinery of destruction. The turning point in Saruman's descent into evil came when he made the fateful decision to ally himself with Sauron, believing that such an alliance would position him to eventually usurp the Dark Lord. This decision was driven by a combination of fear, pride, and a misguided belief in his own abilities. Saruman thought that by aligning with Sauron, he could learn his secrets, gain his trust, and ultimately betray him to take the One Ring for himself. This alliance marked the final severing of his ties with the forces of good and his complete embrace of darkness. Saruman's actions became increasingly ruthless as he sought to consolidate his power, amassing an army of orcs and Uruk-hai to achieve his goals. His plans for conquest were vast, encompassing the destruction of Rohan and the subjugation of the Shire, revealing the full extent of his megalomania and moral corruption. The betrayal of the White Council and the Free Peoples of Middle-earth by Saruman was a devastating event, shaking the very foundations of their alliance against Sauron. Saruman's deception was intricate and deeply felt, as he had long been a trusted leader and ally. His treachery not only weakened the collective efforts against Sauron, but also sowed seeds of doubt and mistrust among the members of the Council. Gandalf, in particular, felt the sting of betrayal keenly, as he had long regarded Saruman as a friend and mentor. The shock and dismay of Saruman's former allies were palpable, as they struggled to come to terms with the loss of one of their own to the forces of evil. The impact of Saruman's betrayal was profound, forcing the remaining members of the White Council to redouble their efforts and confront the reality of fighting a war on multiple fronts. The fall of Isengard was a pivotal moment in Saruman's story, marking the beginning of the end for his ambitions. The once impregnable fortress was besieged by the forces of Rohan and the Ents, ancient tree-like beings led by Treebeard. The Ents, outraged by Saruman's wanton destruction of the forests for his war machine, launched a devastating assault on Isengard. Their attack was both a retribution for the harm done to nature and a decisive strike against Saruman's power. The destruction wrought by the Ents was swift and thorough, dismantling Saruman's stronghold and scattering his forces. This defeat was a significant blow to Saruman, stripping him of much of his power and leaving him vulnerable and isolated. Even in defeat, Saruman remained a dangerous and malevolent figure. After the fall of Isengard, he retreated to the Shire, where he continued his descent into villainy. Driven by spite and a desire for revenge, Saruman sought to impose his will on the peaceful hobbits, turning the Shire into a dystopian reflection of his twisted vision. His actions in the Shire were marked by cruelty and oppression, as he sought to punish those who had thwarted his plans and assert his dominance over a land he saw as beneath him. This phase of Saruman's life was characterized by a desperate and bitter attempt to cling to power, even as his influence waned. His final confrontation came when the hobbits, led by Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, returned to the Shire and led a rebellion against his rule. Saruman's ultimate fate was sealed when he was killed by his own servant Wormtongue, a fitting end for a character whose life had become synonymous with betrayal and treachery. Analyzing Saruman's downfall reveals several key factors that contributed to his corruption. Pride, ambition, and the desire for power were central to his transformation from a noble wizard to a malevolent tyrant. Saruman's belief in his superiority and his growing contempt for others led him to seek power at any cost. His use of the Palantir and his subsequent manipulation by Sauron were instrumental in his descent into darkness. Unlike Gandalf, who remained steadfast and humble, Saruman's pride blinded him to the true nature of his actions and their consequences. His story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting influence of power. The legacy of Saruman's actions and his descent into evil left a lasting impact on Middle-earth. His betrayal and subsequent fall disrupted the balance of power and caused significant suffering and destruction. However, his story also offers valuable lessons about the nature of good and evil, the importance of humility, and the dangers of pride and ambition. Saruman's transformation serves as a stark reminder of how even the most powerful and wise can fall from grace if they lose sight of their true purpose and succumb to the allure of power. In the end, his legacy is one of caution, illustrating the thin line between good and evil and the importance of remaining vigilant against the temptations of power. Through the tale of Saruman, J.R.R. Tolkien explores complex themes of power, corruption, and redemption. Saruman's journey from a revered white wizard to a despised traitor encapsulates the tragic potential for greatness to be twisted into malevolence. His story is a powerful narrative about the dangers of ambition and the corrupting influence of unchecked power, serving as a profound lesson in the epic saga of Middle-earth. Saruman's betrayal of the White Council and the free peoples of Middle-earth was a cataclysmic event that reverberated throughout the land, shaking the foundations of the struggle against Sauron. This betrayal was not a single act, but a series of calculated moves driven by Saruman's growing ambition and desire for power. As the head of the White Council, Saruman had access to vast resources and information, which he used to further his own ends. His duplicity was multifaceted, involving the dissemination of false information, the manipulation of key figures, and the strategic withholding of crucial intelligence. Saruman's initial dissembling allowed him to maintain his position of trust for a considerable time, even as he covertly advanced his own agenda. The full extent of Saruman's treachery became apparent only gradually. Initially, his peers noticed subtle changes: his increasing secrecy, his growing preoccupation with power, and his fascination with the One Ring. These changes, though concerning, were not immediately understood as signs of betrayal. It was only when Saruman's actions began to directly oppose the efforts of the White Council and the Free Peoples that the depth of his treachery became undeniable. He sought to undermine their efforts at every turn, providing Sauron with critical intelligence while concealing vital information from his supposed allies. His betrayal was a profound shock to those who had trusted him, particularly Gandalf, who had long considered Saruman a mentor and friend. The revelation of Saruman's true intentions left the council members grappling with the betrayal, which threatened to unravel their carefully laid plans against Sauron. The fall of Isengard was a dramatic turning point in the War of the Ring, a vivid demonstration of the consequences of Saruman's betrayal. Isengard, once a symbol of Saruman's wisdom and power, had been transformed into a fortress of evil, bristling with machinery, and garrisoned by an army of orcs and Uruk-hai. The fortress, surrounded by the formidable walls of the Ring of Isengard and defended by the impregnable Tower of Orthanc, seemed invincible. However, Saruman's hubris blinded him to the vulnerabilities of his position. His exploitation of the surrounding forests, cutting down trees to fuel his war machine, provoked the wrath of the Ents, the ancient shepherds of the trees. Led by Treebeard, the Ents launched a devastating assault on Isengard, using their immense strength and resilience to break through Saruman's defenses. The Ents' attack was not merely a military engagement, but a force of nature reclaiming its rights. They tore down the walls, dismantled the machinery, and flooded the caverns, undoing years of Saruman's work in a matter of hours. The sight of the once proud fortress being overwhelmed by the raw power of nature was both awe-inspiring and a stark reminder of the limits of Saruman's power. The fall of Isengard stripped Saruman of his physical stronghold and much of his military might. It also marked the end of his direct influence over the course of the war as his defeat forced him into a defensive posture, retreating behind the walls of Orthanc, isolated and increasingly desperate. After the fall of Isengard, Saruman's fortunes continued to decline. His retreat to the Shire marked a further descent into malevolence and spite. Deprived of his power base and humiliated by his defeat, Saruman turned his attention to the Shire, a small and seemingly insignificant part of Middle-earth that had long intrigued him. His invasion of the Shire was motivated by a combination of revenge and a desire to exert control over something, no matter how small. In the Shire, Saruman adopted the alias Sharky and imposed a brutal regime, using local ruffians to enforce his will and turning the idyllic countryside into a dystopian nightmare. His actions in the Shire were marked by cruelty and a perverse pleasure in the suffering of others, a stark contrast to his earlier, more calculated pursuit of power. The final confrontation between Saruman and the hobbits was both a battle and a reckoning. Led by Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, the hobbits rose up against Saruman's tyranny, using their knowledge of the land and their indomitable spirit to drive out his forces. The Battle of Bywater was a decisive victory for the hobbits, culminating in the capture of Saruman. Frodo, embodying the mercy and wisdom he had gained from his journey, offered Saruman a chance to leave peacefully. However, Saruman, consumed by bitterness and pride, rejected this offer, continuing to sow discord even in his defeat. His life came to a tragic and ignominious end when he was killed by Wormtongue, his long-suffering servant, in a final act of betrayal. Analyzing Saruman's downfall reveals a complex interplay of factors that contributed to his corruption. Chief among these were pride and ambition, which drove him to seek power beyond his appointed role. Saruman's intelligence and skill, initially sources of strength, became his undoing as they fueled his belief in his superiority. This belief led him to underestimate others, overestimate his own abilities, and justify increasingly unethical actions. His use of the Palantir, intended to gain insight and advantage, instead became a conduit for Sauron's influence, deepening his descent into darkness. Unlike Gandalf, who remained humble and true to his mission, Saruman's pride made him susceptible to Sauron's manipulations, leading him to betray those he had once sworn to protect. Saruman's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting influence of power. His transformation from a revered white wizard to a despised traitor underscores the thin line between good and evil and the importance of vigilance in maintaining one's moral compass. Saruman's downfall was not the result of a single moment of weakness, but a gradual erosion of his principles, driven by his desire for power and control. This erosion was facilitated by his isolation, as he distanced himself from those who might have counseled moderation and humility. His reliance on the Palantir further isolated him, creating a feedback loop of ambition and paranoia that ultimately led to his ruin. The legacy of Saruman's actions left a lasting impact on Middle-earth. His betrayal and subsequent fall disrupted the balance of power, causing widespread suffering and destruction. However, his story also offers valuable lessons about the nature of good and evil, the importance of humility, and the dangers of pride and ambition. Saruman's transformation serves as a stark reminder of how even the most powerful and wise can fall from grace if they lose sight of their true purpose and succumb to the allure of power. In the end, his legacy is one of caution, illustrating the thin line between good and evil and the importance of remaining vigilant against the temptations of power. Through the tale of Saruman, J.R.R. Tolkien explores complex themes of power, corruption, and redemption. Saruman's journey from a revered white wizard to a despised traitor encapsulates the tragic potential for greatness to be twisted into malevolence. His story is a powerful narrative about the dangers of ambition and the corrupting influence of unchecked power, serving as a profound lesson in the epic saga of Middle-earth. Saruman's ultimate fate, marked by betrayal and ignominy, underscores the peril of straying from the path of righteousness and the enduring consequences of one's actions. His story remains a potent reminder of the importance of integrity, humility, and the relentless pursuit of the common good in the face of overwhelming temptation.